when I heard The Learned Astronomer, written by poet Walt Whitman. Question answers. Words to know. Words. Astronomer. A scientist who studies stars, moons, planets, and other objects in space. Learned. Well educated, usually written as learned and pronounced with two syllable learn ed. Here it is as one syllable to reflect an ordinary person's way of sleeping. Lectured, to give a talk or presentation on a subject. Lecture room. In the 19th century, people often went to listen the lectures. Summary of the poem. The poem When I Heard the Learned Astronomer is written by Walt Whitman. The poet seems to tell the readers that although science is invaluable as a tool to help us understand the complexities of the universe, the true way of understanding the nature is not scientific but intuitive and mystical, and that experiencing life's moral is the only real way. इसमें पोएट ये बताने चाहते हैं कि जो साइंस है वो एक इनवैल्यूएबल टूल है जिसको हम और किसी से काउंट नहीं कर सकते, पर अगर हमको कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ऑफ द यूनिवर्स, अगर यूनिवर्सिटी की अलग अलग बातों को अच्छे से समझना है तो वो साइंटिफिक न होके अपने मन के इंट्यूशन और मिस्टिकल है, जो कि दुनिया में जो अलग अलग मार्वल्स हैं जो भगवान ने बहुत सुंदर कुदरत बनाई है उससे ही समझा जा सकता है. टू अप्रिशिएट द वंडरस ब्यूटी ऑफ द नेचर एंड बी फैसिनेटेड बाय इट्स मिस्ट्रीज. इसमें यह है कि जो उसको अप्रिशिएट करना है वंडरस ब्यूटी ऑफ द नेचर को, और उसी से हमको अट्रैक्ट रहना है, उसी को अपने को समझना है. द पोएट टॉक्स अबाउट द टाइम ही इज़ part of an audience listening to a learned astronomer and deliver a lecture. पोएट एक हिस्से में ये ऑडियंस के बारे में बताते हैं जो कि एक एस्ट्रोनॉमर की बात सुन रहे हैं, जो कि एक लेक्चर दे रहे हैं. द एस्ट्रोनॉमर backs up his theories with a wealth of data, charts, diagrams in order to appeal to human reasons and logic, and it seems to work as the audience responds with much applause. However, the dry and abstract lecture makes the poet feel tired and sick, and he goes out of the claustrophobic confines of the lecture room in mystical moist night air. वहाँ पे जो लेक्चर सुन के वो काफ़ी बोर हो गए, थक गए, और वो बाहर जाके मिस्टिकल मॉइस्ट नाइट, ठंडी हवा और रात को महसूस करने लगे. This simple act of being out with the nature rejuvenates schemes, and he seems to learn about the mystery, power and beauty of the universe. Then he would never learn from the figure and facts. और वहाँ जाके वो समझ पाए कि ब्यूटी ऑफ नेचर क्या है, जो कि उन फिगर्स से वो कभी समझ नहीं पा रहे थे. Comprehension. Answer the following question. First, in the first half of the poem, where is the poet? In the first half of the poet is sitting in the lecture room. Second, in the first half of the poem, who is the poet with and what is he doing? The poet is in the lecture room along with many other listeners, listening to a lecture delivered by a learned astronomer about stars. Which words or phrases shows that the astronomer is respected by the poet and the audience? The phrase like learned astronomer, much applause in the lecture room suggests that the astronomer is respected by the poet and the audience. What scientific tools and methods does the astronomer use? The astronomer uses mathematical proofs, figures, charts, diagrams along with measurements to substantiate his point in the lecture. In the second half of the poem, where is the poet? In the second half of the poet is outside the lecture room under the wide open sky. In the second half of the poem, who is the poet with and what is he doing? In the second half of the poet is out with nature, admiring its beauty and being one with it. The poet here is drawing a contrast between the first half of the poem, where the author is amidst fellow students listening to a lecture about the stars and the universe, and the second half, where he himself goes outside and sees the nature for himself. What words and images in the first half of the poem are in contrast to the perfect silence in the final line? The phrases like lectured with much applause, become tired and sick, rising and gliding, show the restlessness in the contrast to the one of that followed in the second half. Difficult question. What is the message of this poem? The poet here is trying to drive home and the message that the best way to understand nature is not entirely the academic way, as through meticulous calculations. It is imbibed properly in the truest sense, in the intuitive and mystical ways. It is outside the four walls, amidst the nature under starry night sky, one finds actual understanding. Annotate the following lines. When lecture room. Introduction. These lines are taken from the poem When I Heard the Learned Astronomer, composed by Walt Whitman. Central idea. In this poem, the poet is describing the difference between the theoretical knowledge and the practical knowledge, and also he compares knowledge and emotions. Explanation. In the first half of the poet is sitting about a lecture given by a learned astronomer about stars and celestial bodies. The astronomer was very well versed, and he substantiated his point using many proofs like mathematical proofs, figures, diagrams, charts, and everyone enjoyed the lecture. How soon at the stars? Explanation. In the second half of the poem, the poet felt tired and sick. He felt suffocated and left the room. He himself wandered out and examined the mystical moist night air. This act of being out with nature makes the poet feel relaxed and experiences the power and beauty of nature. He learns much more than he would learn from the figures and facts shown by the